Why do some abandoned places look like the people in them just up and left at a moment's notice? Because many times that's what happens. Many companies close their doors unexpectedly and no one goes there to remove the equipment. That's how a lot of abandoned places came to be. They were literally abandoned. There was an old hotel, perhaps better described as a resort, near where I grew up. One day it was open, the next day it was not. My buddies and I would sneak into the place in high school. Kegs were still tapped in the bar area, canned goods still in stock, closets filled with toiletries, and so on. Fire extinguishers were still mounted on walls, and we created a game in the dark known as fire extinguisher tag. How you tagged someone was if you sprayed them with the fire extinguisher. Oh, to be young, dumb, and full of you know what, lol. Because some people do up and leave at a moment's notice. Adding on to this question, why do some abandoned houses look like this too? I used to be an IT contractor specializing in ETL, moving data from one system to another. That meant I worked a lot of mergers and acquisitions. When one of these giant corporations buys another, they drop assets where they sat and walk away. I used to have a pile of laptop computers that they just didn't bother to take back. They close up these buildings and leave behind the office furniture, calendars on the walls, everything. Or they got arrested. Because in some cases people just up and left at a moment's notice. Because people can't afford to move their stuff out when they are evicted. Because sometimes they did, whether through natural disaster, unnatural disasters, violence, extreme poverty, etc. There's lots of reasons why people are forced to leave with only what they can carry. Sometimes they just have. It's hard to understand, but that happens a lot. Real estate agents find their tenant have gone, having taken only a few personal possessions. Also, sometimes people die and the house is left abandoned, sometimes for years. When I was a kid, 1960s, I lived in a tiny town in Queensland, Australia. An old guy up the hill died and his house remained untouched for a decade. When I got a bit older, me and my mate would sneak inside to have a look around. It really looked like someone still lived there, complete with an empty cup on the table. When I moved, my old house definitely looks like I just uprooted and went, even though all of the useful things have been shifted and mostly cleaned. It took me over a month to go back and clean the place up good. And that's just because it still has rental resale value, or I would have pushed it further back in my mind. I can definitely see how a whole town would look like that if there's no value of coming back to clean up former assets. Maybe they did, or they died, and even though the body was removed, no one felt responsible for their stuff. The people who lived there died. Me thinking back to how I left my office in March 2020. Would it be abandoned? The towns around Chernobyl were.